Our MC tonight is Emmy and Murrow Award-winning reporter, anchor, and actress Annette Lawless. She was born in Wellington, Kansas. That's right. She got her start with storytelling when she still had baby teeth. Often, she'd dazzle her friends with elaborate stories at the elementary school lunch table until one day, she gabbed too much and was shamefully penalized without recess for the whole day. A true devastation for any 7-year-old. Annette graduated from K-State with degrees in broadcasting, print journalism, and public relations. She's since worked for ESPN and at TV stations in Topeka, Wichita, and Cleveland. She received dozens of awards in producing, reporting, and photography from the Kansas Association of Broadcasters, the National Press Photographers Association, the Ohio News Photographers Association, and the Emmys. And now, we have her as our very own anchor at Cake News. So that's pretty cool.
That's right.
One of Annette's truest passions is cooking. Her husband recommends her cheese bierox and German apple cake. But no matter what, Annette's heart will always lie in storytelling, acting, and reporting, where she gets to meet interesting people and talk all day long, with as much recess as she'd like. So let's welcome Annette Lawless to the stage.
Oh gosh, thanks, Sarah. I just realized that I'm a mom of 3, and I have a 10-month-old, a 3-year-old, and a 7-year-old, and he gets in trouble still the same as I did back then, so I guess I should be a little more forgiving. Maybe he will be a public speaker and gets to have all the recess he wants to. But it is such a thrill to be here with you tonight. I am just so glad to be a part of this event. A proud Wichitan, a proud Kansan, growing up here and living here pretty much my entire life. It's an honor to tell the stories of people in our community as a journalist. I wake up really early. This is my party animal life tonight, y'all. So I am so glad I get to share it with you, because seriously, this is like bedtime. But it's really a pleasure. I love supporting everything with the Big Read, with the library. Wichitalks is just awesome. But just to go through for everything for this evening, we have amazing speakers. Are y'all ready to be inspired? It is going to be so good, and we're going to hear from everybody, not just, of course, my story about my recess and being a 7-year-old, but also just hearing about everyone's story of identity and the stories that really impacted and shaped of who they are today. So many will talk to us about family. They're going to talk about how they grew up. Some of them will talk to us about the future and what they hope to see. Some talks tonight will be funny. Some will be rather poignant, but each person this evening, they're going to come up on this stage and share their personal story. I think we all are going to be really touched by that. So it's really hard, though, thinking about the format of this evening, to get so personal with strangers. And, of course, for our lovely speakers here, we want to thank you all for being here tonight, to be your authentic selves. I was speaking to someone, one person was a little worried. They're like, what do I say? What do I do? I'm like, be you. Be you. As a journalist, sometimes I feel like people want us to be a certain way, but I'm like, when I go on the news in the morning, I'm just me. And if people don't like that, you can change the channel. It's fine, okay? My husband works at Channel 12, so flip to Channel 12 if you flipped anywhere else, okay? Thank you. All right. But now down to business for us all. So we have given our speakers some guidelines for today, and they actually have a maximum of 20 slides. And each of those slides will automatically advance at 15 seconds. So very visual, very fun to see this. The entire presentation, though, can only last 5 minutes. So as you can imagine, it's going to be a challenge to tell our personal stories in such a tight time frame. And it does require some creativity and ingenuity as well. It'll be rather interesting to hear how everyone comes to approach tonight's topics and theme. And I would love, of course, as we all, wouldn't we like to get on with the show? Yeah? So first up, we have Tasha Hayes. So, yeah. She is going to own it, okay? Everyone will, but she will, trust me. Okay, so she is the owner of the Black Print ICT and is a longtime champion of optimal outcomes for her community. The Black print embodies a deep-seated desire to uplift, celebrate, and unify the Black community and to create safe spaces she sought as a newcomer to Wichita. So I'd love for us all to give a big round of applause. Let's welcome Tasha up here.
In the midst of a tumultuous skies and the crackling energy of a thunderstorm, Tasha made her entrance into the world on May 15th. She arrived, a bundle of energy, like a firecracker igniting the night. She was born to teenage parents who faced their own share of challenges, but always honored dreams of a better future. Tasha's great-grandparents were the first in their family to break free from the shackles of poverty. They were trailblazers in their own right, venturing into entrepreneurship when opportunities were scarce. Their trucking business trained and employed several family members and community members, and it quickly became a pillar of hope for many. Tasha spent days at the trucking business office, which also doubled as Granny's daycare. Time was spent staring at a 19-inch box TV with the antennas spewing from the top, watching what Tasha referred to as the Victor Show. But many of you may know it as Young and the Restless. All while her great-grandmother was taking calls and managing the business operations, Tasha would often mock her and play office secretary, not understanding the skill set she was going to prepare her for the future. As Tasha listened to stories of her great-grandmother, resilience and determination, she felt a spark ignite within her. Their legacy of hard work and innovation inspired her to dream big and reach for the stars. The torch of entrepreneurship was passed down through the generation. Tasha's grandparents expanded the family business, transforming it into a thriving transportation company. They instilled in Tasha the importance of perseverance, adaptability, teaching her failure was not a setback, but a stepping stone to success. Tasha's parents continue the legacy, embracing the spirit of entrepreneurship. Although not in the same line of business, they showed Tasha their ability to pivot, that innovation was the key to staying ahead in a rapidly changing world. Growing up surrounded by entrepreneurial spirit of her ancestors, Tasha knew from a young age that she wanted to follow in their footsteps. She devoured books to build her leadership skills and soaked up every piece of advice her family and mentors imparted in her. She embarked on her own entrepreneurial journey. Armed with the wisdom of her great-grandparents, the vision of her grandparents, and the dedication of her parents, she launched her first startup, Her Inspiration. Her Inspiration was set on a mission to instill life and leadership skills, such as those she gained from her ancestors. The road was not easy. Tasha faced numerous obstacles and setbacks along the way, but she refused to be deterred. She drew stories of her ancestors, knowing that their grit and determination flowed through her veins. With hard work, dedication, and a touch of that entrepreneurial magic that runs through her blood, her innovative ideas and passion for making a difference in her community propelled her to launch her second business, the Black Print. The Black Print serves as a destination for a premium retail experience, featuring curated products that represent dynamic stories of diverse Black talent, dedication, and that same brilliance that runs through her veins. Wow. As I reflect back on my journey, I realized as I wasn't just building businesses, I was carrying on a legacy of generational trailblazers who dared to change the world, who dared to defy the odds and dared to be something better. Because it wasn't on them, it was in them, and that can never be taken away. And as I continue this marathon, I will stand on the shoulders of my ancestors. I know the sky is the limit, not only for me, but for those who dare to follow in their footsteps. I stand before you with a heart overflowing with gratitude. Why, you ask? Because remember those teenage parents that I was telling you about? Well, they've set the pace, and I find joy in the opportunity to continue the race. Like the trailblazers that paved the way, I choose to live daily, inspired by this Maya Angelou quote. My mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive, and to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful, amazing. I'm just visiting her Facebook page. Give a like to the Black Print ICT, okay? Do that this evening if you can. Let's lift some people up, you know? I'm all about that. I love that with my line of work, with what we do here in Wichita. We have some great people, some great experiences, great businesses. We need to say, you did it right. All right, let's go ahead and hear from our next speaker here. Our next presentation is with Brittany Svetecz, and we're so glad to have her here tonight. Now, she leads and empowers the communications team over at Professional Engineering Consultants, and she does this to think beyond the norm and to exceed expectations in their craft. With a penchant for year-round Christmas and boundless energy at all hours, Brittany is basically the love child of Buddy the Elf and Leslie Knope. What a combo, right? What a combo. Oh, my goodness. Now, she does strive to push the boundaries of what marketing looks like in her field. So let's go ahead and welcome Brittany. Come up here. Yeah.
Yes, I'm Brittany, but who is that? On the surface, I'm a mom of 2 beautiful toddler boys. I'm a wife of a bearded giant. I'm a daughter, sister, friend, leader in my career, college graduate, but above all, I'm someone who finishes what I start. But inside, I'm a ball of worry. I'm worried about our parents' plans for their old age, worried if I'm qualified to take up the space I'm in, if we're making smart financial decisions, if I'm a good leader, if I'm setting the right boundaries, if we're raising our children with values and to be kind and caring, and a million other things that take up space on my mental checklist, each one being weighed against future opportunities and risks. Growing up, I watched my mother do it all. Raise 4 kids, work 3 jobs, maintain the house, be our #1 fan, and never let us go without. I realize now that my mom took a hard left turn from the way she was raised to the extent of overcorrection. She rarely told me no. 3 teams bouncing around to 3 different towns in one weekend? Okay. Traveling to different states for tournaments? Yes. She never allowed herself to press the pause button to say no because she wanted to provide the magic for us. And I lived for it. It was a highlight of my childhood. But in watching her, I learned that living for others is what it means to be a working mom and wife. It's this constant go-go mentality. As women, we have to fight harder to get promoted at our jobs, to prove our worth, to get raises. And to do that, we need to be educated, but we also need to be there for our kids and love them and support them. And we have to be good spouses, offering encouragement and kindness. We're supposed to be frugal and save for our future, but also go on vacations and make memories and make sure to financially prepare to take care of our parents when they can no longer do so themselves, but not leave that burden on our children because it's unfair, all while being proactive in our health and making time to nourish relationships. And we're not supposed to admit that's exhausting? And per the expectations, here I am trading places with her. Now it's me running a race with no finish line, fueled by 3 cups of coffee and a Monster every day. I am currently doing my master's program while sitting on 2 boards, and it's incredibly overwhelming. Exhausted, I decided to quit one of the boards, but was convinced to stay. I thought often about quitting my master's, but that's not how I was raised. Quitting isn't an option. You finish the race, whether you're fueled for it or not. So for the past 3 years, it has been this constant voice in my head that I need to do this. I need to make this happen, regardless of if I have the time or mental capacity. Don't get me wrong, it's stressful, but rewarding. I feel a sense of pride when reflecting on everything my family has accomplished and the growth I am seeing in myself. But being a hardcore people pleaser, most of my life has been spent modifying myself to please those around me, while trying to maintain my own identity, which I'm still defining. I'd be lying if I said I didn't wake up with a tremendous amount of pressure weighing on me. A few days ago, I broke down on the way home, not because someone or something had caused me sadness, but because I was so damn worn out. But when I got home, I had my mom face on, and I was ready to play and give my boys what they needed. My list continues to grow longer as the time and energy in my day depletes. Could I spend extra time on it? Sure. But does that take away from spending time with my littles that I value? Absolutely. It's this constant need to accomplish things immediately, which tends to cause disagreements between me and my husband, because he doesn't feel that same requirement. It comes with a constant feeling that I'm not doing enough or that I'm not adding enough value to every situation. It's accompanied by second guessing nearly every conversation had to ensure that I didn't disappoint anyone. So much so that I had to seek outside help to start to tame those feelings and understand that it's okay to not be everyone's cup of tea or espresso or Monster. I can only control the controllable. But being aware of this allows us to be intentional about breaking cycles and finding balance. What might that look like? To me, it takes the foundation of hard work and dedication from my mom, while allowing myself to have grace and set boundaries with my time and what I dedicate it to. It requires tough conversations about how my husband and I want to mold the best versions of our backgrounds into our children while creating new healthy habits. This gives us an opportunity to model behavior that shows it's okay for them to relax, recharge, and say no to things that don't fill their cup. We don't want them feeling the weight of the world and a constant pressure to perform, change who they are, or filter themselves, even though realistically, that weight is inevitable. We want them to know that they are not defined by accolades, and true strength comes from accepting help, not feeding into what pleases others. Teaching them to build others up, to be good partners to strong spouses, to be mentally healthy, and be good support systems for others. Our hope is to raise our children with purpose-based identity and do away with the performance-based identity that's been woven throughout generations.
Thank you, Brittany. Did anyone feel that one? Sometimes it feels so tough to get through the day. You know what, Brittany? You're enough. You're awesome. Y'all are great, okay? So good. And the fact that we're all here, surviving, standing, breathing, it's a blessing. Next up, we have Delmar Uqualla. And I'm so excited to introduce Delmar to you all. So Delmar was born in Wichita, Kansas, traveling between her 4 tribal nations. And she writes poetry and archives for social justice and a better understanding of indigenous culture and traditions. She is trained in holistic and ceremonial healing practices. Delmar's mediums are fashion, dance, song, writing, and activism. Delmar now travels internationally, teaching and learning in indigenous and women's ceremonies. So let's go ahead and give a big, warm welcome for Delmar.
Hauka. Enya Delmar Uqualla. I'm named after the sea, my grandfather, and my last name means warrior in Havasupai. I'm a part of 4 nations, the Namana, Koyigu, Havasupaha, and Ipai Tipai, also known as the Kiowa, Comanche, Havasupai, and Kumeyaay peoples. I'm a ceremonialist, artist, and activist. I was born here in Wichita and traveled in between to my reservation in California. I grew up in the powwows in Wichita and on the reservation in California. I thought everyone had access to their own powwows and ceremonies every weekend until I was 12. I thought everybody just danced around the drum or had access to their traditions. I grew up around talented regalia designers, also known as my mom, my grandma, and my aunt. I felt really regal as an Indigenous woman. I didn't realize there had been any racism towards Natives till I was way older because I was sheltered from it. Here is my grandmother, Annette Uqualla, and she's Kumeyaay in here with her son, Nigel. And she's in the hat. The Kumeyaay are Ipai from San Diego and Baja. They have stories of mermaids and creation stories. We roam from the seas to the mountains, grass houses, basketry, yucca, and acorns. My grandfather, Delmar Uqualla, grew up in the Grand Canyon with his Havasupai peoples. Here's him in National Geographic. You may have seen these photos on social media lately of the waterfalls. The Kumeyaay got displaced by being enslaved to build the missions in San Diego and had to buy their own reservations. A lot of Indigenous peoples were displaced all the way to the 1980s. My grandparents met at Sherman Boarding School after my grandfather got taken to boarding schools ever since he was 5 years old. And my grandmother eventually ran away from all the boarding schools, and she still went to college for business and started her own Indigenous art galleries around Southern California. Here are paintings by Tony Abeda, who she would have in her gallery. After her oldest son, Nigel, passed, Annette Uqualla started diversity awards to bring Indigenous actors and artists together with modern-day artists and actors. Here's me with Irene Bedard, also known as Pocahontas, Jackie Chan, and Selma Hayek. My grandfather still kept the Havasupai language, being the oldest of 9, and he became head of the tribal council during the uranium mine protests, and having our dances like the peach dance still be legal. I do my best to keep the legacy strong and bring awareness to our presence by having clothes and ceremony as activism, wearing prayers in my clothes. And the legacy now is my mother passing on the traditions to me and continuing our teepee ceremonies, or Native American church is the legal name. Our dances make me feel really royal, and I know I have a place and connection with the earth. And it's more than glitz and glamour. Here's one of my fashion groups at the Cannes Film Festival around the Killers of the Flower Moon premiere. We chose to raise awareness towards missing and murdered Indigenous women. Here I am on the stage of Saturday Night Live and speaking at a poetry activism event in Santa Fe and at the Indigenous Forum at the White House, following in my grandfather Delmar's footsteps, bringing awareness in political spaces. All my ancestors, here my little brothers, Anita and Delmar now, and my great-grandmother Neva P. Wardy, who taught me a lot about teepee meetings here in Wichita. And she really taught me a lot about ceremony. I've taken these stories to faraway lands, singing the songs and offering the prayers of my bloodline for those who had it taken away, and to show my little brothers anything is possible for us and that we still exist. I will continue to wear our regalia, even on my nails, while remembering that our ceremonies and traditions are the real medicine, way more than any celebrity. The spirits and ancestors are the biggest stars. My dream is to bring back the ceremonies here between the two rivers in Wichita and build ceremonial spaces for my relatives, to give gratitude to the land, elements, and spirits, and to my ancestors' strength, joy, and resilience. I will continue to learn and listen to our ancient ways. Kaho yehan ima ura.
Wonderful. Thank you, Delmar, so much. Give another applause for her, please. That was wonderful. We know her ancestors are certainly proud, and it's great to hear more of her culture. Next, I would like to welcome Heather Newman. So Heather grew up in southern Colorado through high school and then graduated from college over in East Texas. And that's where she met her husband, Sean. Now, they did live in Tucson, Arizona briefly, and they've raised their 4 children in Wichita for the past 20 plus years. Heather teaches Bible classes to children and adults at her local church and also teaches 5th grade at the Classical School of Wichita. We're thinking of her, my goodness. Let's go ahead and welcome up Heather to the stage. Come on up.
Good evening. I'm Heather Newman. My husband, Sean, and I, as she mentioned, moved to Wichita 23 years ago. We now have 3 daughters and a son. Our family looks like we belong together. However, none of us look exactly alike. When I see my children's variations, I often see our history too. I grew up in southern Colorado with parents and grandparents who live valuing God first and family second. We have had difficult stories in our past as well as our present, but through Tommy Orange and There, I began to realize that family stories told repeatedly shaped me, but so also did those stories not spoken. For example, my maternal grandmother lived many childhood years in a rescue mission where her father was a minister. When I hear my son whistling as he spins wood on the lathe, I vividly remember my great-grandfather who whistled as he worked in carpentry too. Negativity about the rescue mission was not spoken. He loved Jesus and loved people, no matter their circumstances. Great-grandpa supported and strengthened my grandmother when she was widowed with 3 children before the age of 25, and then when she later married a man also widowed with 3 children. Her faith in the Lord, along with family support, sustained her through single parenting and later in raising a blended family. As a newly widowed woman now with 6 children and dozens of grandchildren, she continues to be strengthened by God's goodness. Through Grandma's stories, I hear a history of past pain and sorrow, undergirded with joy and contentment in God. As she listens to, prays for us, and cheers for us all, I'm encouraged to rely on the Lord and to love my family in our highs and in our lows. Last fall, she watched many of my daughter's high school tennis matches. I'm not sure if the 90-year-old or the 16-year-old had a stronger passion to win. Grandma's life is evidence that God is good, even if life for a tennis match is challenging. I think my paternal great-grandparents could have also passed down difficult legacies. They lived through the Great Depression in New Mexico when farming failed, and their heritage included a Cherokee grandfather from Arkansas and the sadness from generations before him, as well as Irish immigrants. But I only knew my grandpa always had a stick of Wrigley's spearmint gum and a smile for me. I saw and heard his unconditional love for Jesus and family, not of dwelling on troubles I know existed. He passed on that faith and devotion to my grandfather, Reuben. I knew Grandpa had a difficult childhood because of his mom's emotional struggles, but I never heard him tell those stories. Instead, he tells tales of good hunts with friends and family. Since childhood, he hunted to provide food. Once he spotted the bobcat shown with him in the picture, chased it down until it climbed a tree where he shot it. He and Grandma lived only 3 miles from me in Colorado on 40 acres while I was growing up. They had a fish pond, horses, snowmobiles, and an ice pond, which invited my brother and I to explore. They loved sharing hospitality with all their guests, including me. Because their hospitality extended to all, we named our youngest granddaughter after Grandma. Though Grandma passed away a few years ago, Grandpa tells our daughter how much she looks like Grandma. Anytime our daughter wants to host friends, we try to say yes. 2 weeks ago, she and 12 other 8th graders had dinner in our home, followed by a lot of play and a screaming competition. She was a fun host, but we pray she loves Jesus and others as my grandma did. One fascinating story is of my grandma's father. Immediately after World War II, he began annually to ship 100 pounds of pinto beans from his farm to a German woodcarver who was trying to provide for his family. This bird and deer are gifts from the German to Granddad that our family still displays. My husband is half German, and our oldest daughter seems to be the most German-looking of our kids. She traveled alone with a layover in Germany once and was trying to fill out the paperwork before arriving at the airport. She kept remembering this story of our granddad and his beans. The men next to her on the airplane didn't speak a word of English, but saw her German last name, walked her through all the paperwork, through customs, and then to her gate. 80 years later, Granddad's story gave her peace in Germany, and she feels a bond with him, though she never met him. Granddad's wife, my great-grandmother Olitha, inspired me to learn. She once told me how she was ridiculed and called old maid because she refused to marry my granddad until she graduated high school. So she married him the weekend after graduation as one of the few girls to finish school. And every time I would see her, she would go out of her way to be kind to others. I saw Granddad and Grandma never telling stories of farming years, but they worked and they loved. My family is connected by grandparents who lived to love Jesus and others, each in their various ways. Irish were forbidden at times in the United States. Native Americans endured harsh treatment. Germans were placed in U.S. internment camps. Yet these aren't the stories passed down in my family. Instead, I live with legacies of kindness through the love of Jesus. He is the creator of all ethnicities, and I see evidence of his goodness in every culture. He created us for an identity that loves him first, no matter if we're Irish, Cherokee, or German. So the spoken and the unspoken stories prove to my family that our security is knowing him, so we can look towards the future with strength and a smile. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Our next speaker we have is Stephanie Luna. A little about Stephanie. So she's originally from Hutchinson and moved to Wichita with her husband back in 1997. She was an online instructor for Hutchinson Community College and National American University. Stephanie writes poems, authored a book of poetry, and is currently working on another book. Lots of accomplishments here. She has a love for community and was a member of the City of Wichita's Citizens Review Board. Let's go ahead and welcome Stephanie on the stage.
As a member of Generation X, those born between 1965 and 1980, two events changed my life. The first, being a member of the class of 1985. In the fall of 1981, in my hometown of Hutchinson, 3 junior high schools, my school, Sherman, Liberty, and Central, merged to become the first high school freshman class. This was scary. Having gone through 7th and 8th grades, we were ready to be leaders, only having to start at the bottom. However, the powers that be decided our schools needed upgrades and improvements, so they sent us 9th graders to Hutchinson High School. At Hutch High, I swam through uncharted waters alone. Only, excuse me, when the currents were deep at times, I went ahead and navigated through. And there would be times that once that I lost, I forgot where my classes were. And I would be roaming the halls looking for them when I got shoved by other students who apparently knew where they were going. They knew Hutch High's layout, and they had pushed me. Now, not gonna lie, my heart skipped a few beats, and it felt like it jumped up my throat. However, I moved on, I went ahead and maintained. The second event was punk music. This genre focused on individuality and anti-establishment. Since messages evoked anger, lyrics were vivid. And it was the kind of music that was for those who felt left out of place and or bullied. So listening to bands like Bad Brains and the Misfits was a symbol of anti-mainstream. Fans of punk music also felt comfortable not following status quo. And I remember fellow classmates who scoffed at the name Dead Kennedys when they seen the names written on my binder and said I should be listening to the Eurythmics. I was saying, okay. But my parents, they instilled in us, in me and my 11 siblings, a strong ethic. And they also taught us to stand firm whenever we faced any obstacles. And my mother, Ruth, she worked hard as a housekeeper. And my father, Luis, he came from Michoacan, Mexico. He immersed himself into the American culture, learned English, and worked his way up to section foreman for Santa Fe Railroad, now known as Burlington Northern Santa Fe, or BNSF. What I've learned in the past resonates today. And my love for volunteering and my interest in volunteering, I like to inspire people through my optimism and faith. And my volunteering is another alternative to meeting new people, learning new skills, and just getting out of my comfort zone. I hope to inspire my family members of my current and future generations. Wichitalks is my first volunteering opportunity since March 4th of 2023. When I fell ill. Long story short, I'm under the care of a neurologist who has had me as having Chiari malformation, a condition where brain tissue gets into the spinal cord and causes severe headaches and neck pain. And several side effects come along with it. But one day, I hope to have more opportunities to volunteer. Thank you.
How wonderful. Stephanie, thank you for being here. That's amazing. I'm so glad that you could come and be a part of this, especially having a health condition like that. So wonderful. Great to support her and all the speakers here. We have such wonderful speakers still on deck to share their stories. So next up, we're going to hear from Dr. LaTasha Ely Kelly. And so, yeah. Oh, good. Oh, my goodness. So Dr. LaTasha Ely Kelly holds a PhD in Language, Literacy, and Culture from University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Also, though, wait, there's more. A master's in Education Policy, Planning, and Leadership, and this is from the College of William and Mary, and a bachelor's in Sociology from Christopher Newport University. So along with being a professor at George Mason University and University of Maryland Global Campus, she owns the Millennial Black Professor and recently founded TMBP Media, both dedicated to amplifying underrepresented voices and supporting the endeavors of students, professionals, and entrepreneurs of color. A Kansas transplant originally from Newport News, Virginia, Dr. Tasha lives in Park City, and she lives there with her husband, Corinthian, and loves reading, attending concerts, and game nights with friends and family, and speaking to everyone here at Wichitalks. So why don't we go ahead and welcome Dr. LaTasha up to the stage.
Leela Mae Tucker Galloway had 11 children: Yumiko, Dwight, Avis, Turnin, Okeson, Proctor, Drees, Timothy, Conjo, Melissa, Cheddar. Leela Mae, affectionately known as Sweet Gal, was my grandmother. She enjoyed reading the Bible, sewing, and gardening. I can see it like yesterday. My mom, granddad, and granny sitting in the living room watching CMT because she loved country music and her favorite singer was Charlie Pride. Dries Lagarde Galloway Ely had 2 children, Calvin Jr. and Latasha. Dries, affectionately known as Miss D, is my mother. She enjoys cooking, serving in her Christian ministry, and teaching in the field of cosmetology. While she does like a Randy Travis song every now and then, she'll never turn down a good Biggie song. When I was running through this with her, she specifically told me to say, and I quote, B-I-G-P-O-P-P-A. Yes, thank you. Granny was married in her early 20s and had her first child right around 26, around the same time as when my mom had me. By then, our family had moved at least 3 times for my father's military career. Prior to each move, my mom came so close to completing her nursing degree, but with the hustle and bustle of homemaking, motherhood, and military life, she was unable. Fast forward another 10 years, and my parents were separated. Having been a stay-at-home mom for most of her adult life, she scrambled to figure out how she would make ends meet. As much as I respect my mom for figuring it out, getting her cosmetology license, being the epitome of our family saying, where there's a will, there's a Galloway. It was during those times of struggle that I made the decision to do everything in my power to never find myself in that position, totally dependent on a man or anyone for that matter. The only way I knew to do that was to get an education, and lots of it. This was solely out of concern for my future self, as I'd never had that hankering for babies or even one baby that so many of the women in my life seemed to have. This at an early age was one of the first of many things that often made me think, something's wrong with you. But don't worry, I'm in therapy. But seriously, I'd been conditioned by what I saw watching shows that came on, TGIF, The Cosby Show, Fresh Prince, movies, really everywhere. Motherhood was not just the way to go, it was the only way. And if you didn't have children, something had to be wrong with you. But none of that mattered. I knew having children wasn't a personal desire, and I wouldn't be bullied into it. At 23, diagnosed with fibroids and suffering with all that comes with them, I requested surgery that would remove my ability to have children, and I was told no. I was told no then and for years to come by doctors insisting that I or my future husband would definitely want kids someday. The negative impact to my quality of life was significant, but I persisted. So I'm a 3-time first-generation college graduate, and if you look at the acknowledgement section of my dissertation, there's a line that says, I look forward to sharing a lifetime of accomplishments with you. On December 18th, 2021, Corinthian Kelly and I stepped into our journey of doing just that. Along the way, there have been several, when are y'all gonna have kids moments. A quick word of advice, stop asking people that. And stop trying to convince them to change their minds to fit your concept of family. Because empowerment lies in the power of choice, reclaiming our narratives, our bodies, and our futures from the grasp of outdated norms. In the world we've created that is our union, 2 generations removed from my grandmother who birthed 11 children, our chosen littles, our 4 nephews, 2 nieces, and 2 godchildren, shout out to my nephew Trey, who's here today, and the dozens of youth we've mentored, supported, cared for, and loved along the way. This identity I've inherited, grown into, and intentionally crafted with a supportive partner, shout out to my love, who's also here today, also paving his own way, reflects the persistence and ingenuity of the women in my family and is also a testament to the possibility of change. It signifies a movement toward a future where the value and identity of a woman are not predicated solely on motherhood, marital status, or other patriarchal standards, but on the realization of her dreams and aspirations, the fullness with which she lived and not just survived. And yes, the breadth of her contributions to society, whatever she chooses those to be. My grandmother and mother's journeys profoundly influenced my understanding of sacrifice, determination, and the complexities of identity and womanhood. Through my story, I embody the significance of breaking cycles and redefining norms, I hope serving as a beacon for future generations to forge their own identities free from constraints of the past. Thank you.
So good. So good. It's so nice to see our speakers and their support crew. And I will say to your husband, Corinthian, and nephew, Trey, I bet they're so proud. Shouldn't they be so proud? Like, so proud. That's awesome. I love hearing everyone's stories. We still have more, and this is wonderful. I don't know about you all, but I love seeing the pictures, the flow of it all. It's just like, dang, they have so much. And to see what they select for their 5 minutes, I'm like, that is a tough job. That's so tough. All right, so up next we have Shanae Sloan. So Shanae is a Kansas native, mother of 4 and wife, and she is a professional fundraiser at Harry Hines Memorial Hospice, a real estate advocate as well over at Berkshire Hathaway, and also a small business owner. She is active in her community as well as her church, and her hobbies include reading, working out at Hot Works, and spending time with friends and family. So let's welcome you up here, Shanae. Let's go.
The power of laughter can provide healing when life gets hard. Laughter reduces stress, increases endorphins, and helps you connect with other people. Even anxiety and depression respond to a good joke. My kindred spirit and grandmother, Constance Mariah Coltra Bales, used laughter as a great coping mechanism to help her manage some of life's unpredictable moments. She was born during the Depression as an only child of a divorced mom and an alcoholic dad. She put herself through college, married a Purple Heart veteran, and rose above her station to build a big family full of faith, love, and laughter. Her work ethic and grit were one of a kind. While raising 5 kids, she worked full-time as a physical therapist. She helped her pharmacist husband with his drugstore and gift shop in Wellington, Kansas. A great entrepreneur, she opened several successful businesses and was civically active, serving on many boards. She was a woman of great faith and volunteered in many ways in her church. She was in dozens of plays in the community theater. She loved to fish, camp at Bluegrass, and was always playing music and singing songs. But above all, she was hilarious. She was never afraid to laugh at herself. Her stories were honest, self-deprecating, and showed a glass-half-full approach to some of life's messiness. And the sound of her laugh, well, it made you laugh too. The Wichita Big Read author shares stories to acknowledge and heal past trauma, and my grandmother used laughter as a means of coping with hers. Here are some of my favorite Grandma Connie stories. The time she kept smelling farts everywhere she went. She thought everybody was passing gas and was secretly judging those around her. About 2 weeks went by before she found a hard-boiled egg in her purse that she'd forgotten about. Thus, the gross farty smell was actually coming from her, and she was mortified. She loved to play the piano, violin, and most of all, she loved to sing. She once got an Elvis Presley costume as part of a play. Once at a family wedding, Elvis, a.k.a. Grandma Connie, made a special appearance to sing to the newlyweds. Love Me Tender comes off a little differently when it's your grandma dressed in a jumpsuit. As a child, she always wanted a dimple. When my youngest was born with 2 perfectly cute deep dimples, she was so proud. She'd tell us that she'd twist her face up to make it look like she had a dimple, but really it made it more like a snarl or that she was having a stroke. As an only child, her pride and joy was her big family. There are over 75 of us, and I'm going to point out the pink poodle because I'm a little off on my timing. There are 75 of us, and Christmas is always her favorite. As she got older, it got a little more confusing for her, but no one would ever say anything if there was a mix-up in the presents, even when she gave teenage 6-foot cousin Nate a pink poodle purse. She was unfortunately, self-admittedly, not a great cook. She tried so hard and would laugh at her cooking fails. One time, she put a pie in the oven and forgot all about it. The pie rotted and grew a head of mold that was so big that the next time she opened the oven, it looked like there was a head in the oven, and she screamed. One time, she cooked my grandpa's favorite, cherry pie. She was so proud and worked so hard on it. Unfortunately, she forgot to remove the cherry pits, and when my grandpa bit into the pie, chomped on a cherry pit, he broke his tooth in half. She called it the cherry pits story. Because she was a Depression-era baby, she never threw anything out, ever. That included expired, curdled 6-month-old milk that I accidentally drank one time, a free loaf of bread given to us at a restaurant in Florida, only to accompany her all the way back to Kansas, and a turkey leg from a state fair that took her about a week to eat. Lastly, one time she forgot about some eggs boiling on the stove. When she finally remembered, the pan was empty. Well, that's because the eggs had exploded and shot all the way up to the ceiling. Now, as a mother myself, I tried to emulate that same funny in life and share with others my blunders and shortcomings so we can connect and heal with laughter too. Her trailblazing work ethic is seen in each of her children and grandchildren. I myself am an entrepreneur, a real estate agent, and a professional fundraiser for Harry Hines, as well as a mom to 4 great kids, while staying active in my church and community. I miss her every day, and the funny stories she would tell. And it's not that things aren't hard or that our family hasn't had our share of tragedy, but we do our best to look at the bright side and find the funny, just like Grandma Connie would have wanted us to. The last story, which we'll refer to this picture here, is something she would call embarrassing, but also a cautionary tale, where life's mishaps can be painfully funny. She had stopped by a rest stop to use the facilities, and it was a rather unsanitary situation. She pulled out Purell, the hand sanitizer, to de-germ. For whatever reason, she thought it'd be smart to put a little in her nether regions. Unfortunately, she forgot that it had alcohol in it, and it burned like the dickens. So henceforth, she called that story Pure Hell. Thank you very much.
We have to give an applause, not just to that, but for Grandma Connie, continuing to bring laughs to us. I don't know, that was, oh my gosh, the egg, the Purell, oh my gosh, pure hell. All right, well, we have so much more here. We have our next speaker. So we have Julian Ascari Montez. So hopefully I did it right. We went through this before, so I hope I do it justice. But Julian is a creative, passionate, and dedicated storyteller. He works at the Kansas Leadership Center that's right, he does. He works there as the creative services manager, where he deploys his creative skills to unpack what it means to exercise leadership in Kansas and beyond. Now, Julian, he contracts with the state of Kansas as a field representative for Kansas Creative Arts Industries Commission under the Department of Commerce, where he works to support and advance arts and culture work. When it comes to his time to relax, Julian spends time with his wife, Chrissy, and pup, Daphne. Can't wait to hear more from him. Let's welcome him to the stage here.
My name is Julian Ascari Montez. I am from my mother, Elizabeth Rubio Montez, and I am from my father, Jose Montez, and I am from the Marigolds. In a way, I was a representation of my parents' fighting spirit, as my first 2 weeks of my life were spent in an incubator. My lungs were not developed since I was a preemie baby. My middle name feels like a reflection of that. Ascari was my father's nickname on the high school basketball team for how aggressive his playing style was. Honestly, I wish I could have seen that. According to him, the Ascaris were a mighty warrior tribe of the Aztecs. Now, I'll admit, I haven't found proof of that to be true, but I've never had the heart to tell him. Who am I to deny such a legacy? My tío abuelo would tell me when I was a baby, I would run and grab a luchador mask and sprint through the dusty yard of El Paso, only to trip and fall over. I wouldn't cry, though. I would dust myself off, smile, and get right back to running. He would say that I could survive anything. However, for the longest time, I was Julian Montes. I was a step removed from my mother and from my father. I felt lost to assimilation. I could hint that my name was Julian, but would quickly be met with opposition. So I gave in, and I gave up that fight. From then on, that hard J followed me as a reminder of a price I would pay for safety in an America that did not consider me equal, or in some cases, as capable as my counterparts, or just flat out not capable at all. I was lost to the sea. As a result, I grew up angry, high-tempered, and volatile. I navigated these United States unsure of who I was or where I was from. My parents did their best to show me, but knowing was dangerous at times. At least not until I was 18. I sat across from Ana Villarreal, an admissions counselor for the community college I was applying to here in Wichita. She asked me what my name was, and I said, Julian. And she paused, and then she asked me again, but added, what do your parents call you? So I said, Julian. A short conversation led to this lesson. Your name is all that you have, and you should never surrender it. Shortly following, I began introducing myself as Julian again, and I felt that culture begin to return. That angry boy became a dedicated, hopeful man, because I got my name back. Why talk about this? Because my story matters, just like yours. It spans generations and has many twists and turns that lead me to where I am now. And honestly, I might still be an Osabo kid, but soy lo que soy un hijo de sol y soy de aquí y allá. I am that I am. I am a child of the sun, and I am from here and from there. Soy Julian Escari Montes. Knowing these things has made me move more confidently in risky spaces. I know where I want to go because I know where all parts of me have been. My sense is knowing the story of where you're from helps you unpack and connect to the pieces of your identity. And when people understand who they are, the more likely they are to be more active community members wanting to do good work for the common good. All that to say, because of my name, I'm connected to a line of gutsy brawlers. I fight for my name. It's all that'll be left in me when I'm long gone from this earth. And because of my name, stories of my ancestors continue on through me. My purpose is to elevate and tell stories in ways that speak to the heart from the heart, living into the oral tradition set before me through the culture. And I've got love for the people. I am more than a brown man with a couple of cameras and a decent eye. I am a dedicated, curious, and passionate storyteller. Our stories matter. Your story matters. And because of my name, I will forever find my road back to home, to my mother, to my father, to the culture that fills my head with dreams and my heart with hope. Though I hope at the end of it all, when I'm 6 feet under or wherever I end up, that I won't be pushing up daisies. I hope to be pushing up marigolds.
That was beautiful, so beautiful. Can we, I don't know if it's too weird, can we say his name together? He's not Julian, he's Julian, yeah. Take ownership of who you are, of your history, of what makes you. I think that's just such an important message tonight as we hear everyone's stories. That was beautiful. Our next speaker we have here is Eileen Rueda da Costa, and I'm so excited to invite her up here. We were talking before. Oh my gosh, she is just a bundle of joy. So she is the Communications and Engagement Director at the Neighboring Movement, and she also moonlights as an event photographer in her free time. So she married her college sweetheart, if you didn't know, and she is the mother of 2 energetic girls. The thing we were relating with before, we were talking about, like, she's like, I'm a mom, and I'm like, I'm a mom. And I'm like, how old's your youngest? And she's like 10 or 11 months old. And I'm like, mine's 10 months old. What's your daughter's name? My daughter's name is Amelia. Her daughter's name is Amelia. We're like just floored. But anyway, nothing about me, all about her. She spends most of her days, though, connecting and learning from incredible people, including her children and everyone here. Let's go ahead and welcome up Eileen to the stage, okay?
That's bronchitis. I'm sorry. Hi. My name is Eileen, and I get to talk to people for a living. I get to find out what they love to do, but like really love to do. It's what they're great at, or sometimes not so great at, but it's still skills that they love either way. I get to have meaningful conversations, and I pay my light bill with it. I'm a storyteller through and through. When I was prompted to think about today's topic of generational identity, what I didn't want to do was put a spotlight on the trauma. But I wanted to share my story, and as I spoke with friends in preparation for tonight, I realized that I can't hold the good, the wealth, in one hand without holding the bad, the trauma, in the other. So I want to tell you about the cycles that these matriarchs individually broke and how we created enough healing for the generations that will come after us to do that much better. You might not know this. Well, you might not know the name, but this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's one of those things, you see it everywhere. You don't know where you learned it. Starting from the bottom, we have physiological needs, food, water, shelter. Then we have safety needs like job security, structure in our lives, resources. And from there, we move into love and belonging. This would include our friendships, our families, our communities. And the last 2 are esteem and self-actualization. That would be status or recognition, our achievements, our purpose, the desire to become more than what we can be. I stated earlier that I'm a storyteller, and I love what I do. Every day I get to actively engage in my community, and I see the privilege that it is to get to work for joy and not just survival. The best example I can give you that I feel would make the most impact is to tell you the story of how my eldest daughter's birth went and how that led me into this journey of self-discovery. I chose home birth for both my children by complete accident. Back in 2020, I was in my final semester of college at Wichita State, and I was heavily pregnant. My husband had truly terrible benefits at his job, and we got quoted $10,000 to give birth at Wesley. After chatting with a friend, she told me about her midwives at Born Midwifery, and she told me how much she was investing, and shockingly, it was less than what my insurance had been quoting me, so I had a home birth, and it was truly amazing. It was literally the worst pain of my life, but I was the most empowered and secure and sacred I have ever felt. I saw myself in her tiny little sparkly eyes, and it was incredible. And for the first time and probably ever, I was surrounded by a team of women entirely dedicated to making sure that I not just survived this, but that I enjoyed it. I learned about birth, an objectively terrifying thing that giant textbooks are dedicated to, in a way that framed it as an opportunity for transformation. The most prominent feeling that I left with on my daughter's birthday was that I can literally do anything. When I shared my birth story with my community, with other people who look and were raised just like me, I found countless stories of trauma, but also resiliency and reclamation. I learned about the reality of the inequities that my friends faced as they prepared to birth their own babies. But most importantly, I found that I was moved to action as I drank in these stories. I am so grateful that my mother gave me the gift of living for more than survival. She and my dad immigrated here in their early 20s, and though I resented how strict and sometimes how unreasonable the expectations were that were set for me, I see now that they were just a couple of kids, and they had to tackle parenting in a country that made it really freaking scary. They raised 4 first-generation children that carry the burden of knowing that there will never be a tangible thing that we can do that will repay them for the sacrifices and for giving us this opportunity. I hold this honor of being a storyteller quite sacred.
I know that with each conversation I have, I'm in the position of making sure that this person can see their worth. With each person I get a photograph, I stop time and I give them the gift of seeing themselves through my eyes. My mom spent her life working to provide us safety. Her mother spent her life working to survive, and I get to spend mine working to create better community. And it is with complete awe that my girls get to spend their lives improving their own esteem. Maybe in another life, I don't exist, but the matriarchs of my lineage, they would have been given the same opportunity. They wouldn't have to wonder about the what-ifs in life. They would simply get to live them. But for now, this is the privilege of my lifetime. Thank you.
Beautiful mama. Your girls will be so proud. Thank you, Eileen. Our next speaker this evening, we have Annie Garvey. So Annie Garvey is an everything enthusiast and has lived in a multitude of places, including Siberia. She has initiated, developed, operated, and managed 19 businesses, multitasking, my goodness. Well, since returning to Wichita, she has continued her active involvements in all arts, establishing the monthly arts forum composed of, at last count, 59 art-related organizations and agencies. Her greatest achievement, the real pride and joy, is her son, Tristan. So glad to welcome up here on the stage, Annie. Come on up.
I want to especially thank Haley before we begin. If it weren't for Haley Krausen, this could not have happened. Thank you so much. I mean that. There are two signs above and next to my front door. One is, do good and care not to whom. And the other is, love is the language spoken here. Here you see, I think you see it, you see my pink and green whimsical cottage, which was where my granny lived and radiated love, right next door to the family home most of my life. I think the most important story I have to tell about myself is my chosen view of the world. One which begins and ends with the firm belief that good is the greatest power. Every human is walking around carrying an invisible sign that says, love me. I want to. Not long ago, a friend asked me if I was always happy. I paused before replying, I try to be. This came fast on the heels of a pronouncement from another friend who happens to be East Indian, who said to me, you have the most open mind of anyone I know. That really took me aback. And I said, do you really think that's true? And she said, oh, absolutely. Well, this greatest compliment insists that I acknowledge why I am the way I am and how I came to be this way. I'm extremely blessed coming from a family who love freely, give guilelessly, appreciate the wide world, care so deeply, and view the world respectfully. The circuitous path compelling me to pursue almost countless iterations was cut in a wilderness by my beloved grandparents and precious parents. Grandfather was born in a sod house, and he ran his long obstacle race out of poverty to achieve remarkable success. I am most grateful for his wisdom, along with his admonition to me that we learn only from our mistakes, which I took to heart and consequently am a certified genius on the mistake scale. Got that? My Quaker grandmother was born in 1893 and raised among the Indian children near Arkansas City, maintaining her friendship and with her childhood playmates' appreciation for Indian culture and reverence for Indian art and ways. I don't know if the picture has come up yet of it's the opening ceremony. It's very grainy. It's the opening ceremony of the kiva in the Garvey Center, where she honored her friends with the kiva and the sculpture there. And she remained close friends with Black Bear Boson throughout their lives. My father had many pursuits, but none which expressed his passion to improve our world when he built houses all over the world in 27 countries for people who had quite literally nothing, believing that home ownership empowers one. My mother worked diligently and, among other things, founded 2 schools. The second one is the Independent School, named so because she believed each child is unique and valuable, worthy of recognition and validation. My father built the school buildings for her on our 40 acres around our home, where I grew up climbing the trees, swimming in the lake, getting poison ivy every summer, and riding my horse. Mother's final words before she went to sleep for the last time were, "Let's get going. There's more to be done. More children, more families to help." I often use the word guileless to describe Mother, but it applies to both parents and grandparents as well. It's a purity of motive, an honest, unpretentious, genuine giving. They lived modestly, to such an extent that grandfather was often mistaken for the janitor in his building. Today, after living around the world in 15 different homes, being involved in lots of businesses and creating ballet and art companies, I live in the center of Mother's school campus, surrounded all day by hundreds of children, and I get to be their fairy godmother, Annie Boo. I get to bestow love, admiration, and appreciation on these fresh new explorers. As a dancer and a pilot and a scuba diver, I know the joy of untethered movement, and I want to encourage expression in these young ones. So I am the way I am, joyful, because I choose to be.
Thank you, Annie. Next up is Carmen Macias. Carmen graduated from Rockhurst University with a Bachelor of Arts, and she majored in nonprofit leadership and English with a minor in psychology. Now, Carmen is a frequent volunteer in the Wichita community, and she's also competing for the title of Miss Kansas in June. Wishing you the best of luck with that. And also, in her free time, Carmen enjoys reading, playing her banjo, and being outside. So let's go ahead and welcome up Carmen to the stage.
My great-grandfather, Antonio Macias, immigrated to the United States in 1918. Like many immigrant families, they sent a male to scout out an area and send back word when he found a suitable place to land. Antonio was later joined by his wife, Concepcion Macias, and their 5 children. At the time, numerous Mexicans left their homes to flee the Mexican Revolution. Antonio and Concepcion found work and community in the historic end of Wichita, Kansas. Construction of the Santa Fe Railroad brought an influx of immigrants to the Wichita area. According to the Kansas Department of Transportation, over 19,000 Mexicans came to Wichita to build the railroads. Cudahy Meatpacking Plant near 21st and Broadway was another driving force for Mexican immigrants. In fact, my grandfather, Francisco, who we will get to in just a moment, worked at that very plant for 29 years. Before they were laid to rest, Antonio and Concepcion had 2 more children, one of which was my grandfather, or abuelo, Francisco Pedro Macias I. My brother would become the second. This cemetery bears the marks of racism in Wichita, as parts are still segregated to this day. Grave sites are something you can't desegregate. Frank was born into a poor, working-class family. He was one of 2 siblings born in the United States. He was taught at an early age that you had to work and work hard to make the life for yourself. At the mere age of 10, Grandpa Frank was given the nickname of the Wheat King. On the tracks on Broadway, workers unloaded shipments of wheat off the rail cars. Frank discovered there were still grains left in the corners of the cars. When the workers sent the seemingly empty car down the track, my grandpa organized a group of children to gather their forgotten wheat, bag it up as quickly as possible, and run off before the workers ran them off. Frank then decided who got to sell the wheat that day and keep the money. Frank was a devout Catholic and entered the seminary. Luckily for me, he fell ill with rheumatic fever and was sent home to heal. During that time, he met my wonderful grandmother, Katie. When they married, they were considered a mixed marriage. They felt the pressure of it too. Katie's white family didn't understand why she married a Mexican man, and Frank's family didn't understand why he married a white woman. Throughout his life, Frank experienced racism. Stories commonly shared amongst the family are how Frank sat in the balcony of the Nomar Theater, as that was the designated area for Mexicans and blacks. At times, my relatives would try to sneak down to the white section, but were promptly kicked out. Another instance, Frank visited a car lot to rent a vehicle. When he talked to the salesman, the man looked at him and said, "There are no cars to rent today." Stunned, my grandfather inquired as to why the full lot of cars were inoperable. When a white family came in to rent a vehicle and were promptly helped in choosing one, Frank understood why there were no cars to rent that day. Katie and Frank had 7 children whom they worked tirelessly for. Frank became a manager at Cudahy, and at one point his sons and nephews worked underneath him. He pushed them harder than anyone at the plant, so much so that a nephew asked, "Uncle Frank, why are you working us so hard?" To which he responded, "So you'll never come back." As Katie and Frank's family expanded, they had the difficult decision to make. Needing a bigger house, they moved their family out of the North End and eventually into the suburbs. They chose not to teach their children Spanish and focused on assimilation as to avoid prejudice, racism, and rejection. Frank emphasized the necessity of education. Although he didn't get his degree until much later in life, he heavily encouraged his children to go to college and beyond. All 7 have been successful in various avenues. Their accomplishments include serving in the Vietnam War, one as a Green Beret, a nurse, a chemist, attorney, accountant, and more. If you go to Newman University, you are likely a stone's throw away from a Macias accolade or plaque. Growing up, I was told all of these stories thinking, I am Mexican American. I am proud to be Mexican American. I wore it on my sleeve. In elementary school, I loudly claimed my heritage until white kids started to poke fun of me, asking, "If you're so Mexican, why can't you speak Spanish? Why don't you look it?" Or tainting my beautiful name by saying, "Haha, you're a car and a man." I immediately regretted sharing any sense of my identity with others to the point that I purposely took out the accent in my last name, and even considered going by my much more European middle name of Antoinette. I thought that putting an accent in my name or talking about my heritage meant I was a poser or trying to falsely claim to be more Hispanic than I was. It wasn't until well into my 20s that I reintroduced the accent into Macias and cherished the uniqueness of my name. I don't think my grandparents' decisions were a mistake, but I do wonder if they had the foresight of the unintended consequences, would they have chosen differently. Now I intentionally learn about my culture and heritage. My dad and I tried to make tamales once, but accidentally made the masa so thick that it broke the mixing spoon. For those of you who have made tamales, you know that that's not even close to the right texture. Now I also put up an ofrenda for Dia de los Muertos. I love searching the house with my dad for items that my grandfather and grandmother would have liked, sewing for my grandma, tequila for my grandpa. And for anyone who is hesitant to embrace your culture, know that your identity is for you. You do not need to prove to anyone who you are, and it's never too late to love yourself and where you come from.
Thank you, Carmen. It's so nice to hear everyone's stories, especially things of family, Katie and Frank, all that. Wonderful. Our next speaker we have this evening, we have Matthew Pewardy. And I know Matthew, oh my gosh, I think it's so great to have you here today to share more, and I'm sure you all may be familiar with him too. So he's a Wichita resident and a member of the Comanche tribe of Oklahoma. His full-time role is Senior Manager of Data Analytics with Heartland Dental. In his spare time, he pursues his art in the forms of metal fabrication, welding, drawing, painting, as well as custom car building and computer programming. So let's go ahead and welcome Matthew up to the stage, okay? Perfect.
I'm gonna try to turn that a little bit so I can see, so that's better. Hi, my name is Matt Peawardy. I guess we already went to that part, but I am Comanche. I've got the owl here censored for my native family and friends here. I didn't want to wish the harbinger of death on you today. I'm a jack of all trades, and honestly, I have very little interest in being an expert in a single thing. Here are some cartoons. I love creating art digitally, mainly because it can exist. Anything can exist. You're not tied down by the laws of whatever. Also, I like sculpture. Here's some sculptures I'm super proud of. The Death Star fire pit that I'm using my truck there, we made that and auctioned it off for the Humane Society in honor of my dog Lily. I've had a lot of successes with weight loss and failures, as you can see. I used to be a lot fatter than I am now. Like, that's a joke, so you guys can laugh at that. Also, I apologize to the audience. I did the math here. A lot of times I do reports for like CEOs and stuff, and they're kind of dumb, so you have to do the math for them. Today we're going to talk about how these things tie together. My timing's a little off, so we'll get to going, but data analytics, anxiety, and my heritage, my Comanche heritage. This is the first Peawardy. This is Big John Peawardy, and I thought this was always interesting because the name is spelled out different, as time goes along. And his name was just Peawardy, right, or Pee Wee Wardy, right? And so he was the first one, so I think that's really unique. Native Americans experience psychological distress 1.5 times more than the average folk. I've got the links if you want to send them. There's a bunch out there. I'm going to talk about that today, and I'm going to talk about anxiety. So here's two different portrayals of 19th century American life. You can see that two very different perspectives, right, if we look at these, in two different worlds. And I think it's very interesting. This is me. This is my quick family tree here. I am five generations removed from warriors, right? So it would appear that warrior blood and that anxiety and that runs through my veins. This is an example of how anxiety works in my head, right? So this is the cons. Like, something happens. We had this happen this week, and you have to analyze the situation quickly, and it has a negative response. And here is like the positive sides. We can process things very quickly. We can weigh all the outcomes, and we can come up with the potential solution very quickly. All these things happen in speed, and if we can harness, and I personally have a lot of success with this, but if I can harness, and failures, but if we can harness this anxiety before it spirals out of control, we might have something. We might have something that can help us. And I think this is where kind of superpowers come in. And I think superpowers are real. And I think it's just beating the negative side of it before it becomes a problem. And also I wanted to shout out to ChatGPT for hooking me up with this cool image. Thanks again, ChatGPT. There we go. And so I was going to tell you, we're going to tie it all together. And that's kind of how we did. We've got heritage. I've got the data analytics, thinking about things and using that. And so this is an example of how I think about data. And it's the same thing as the anxious problem that I showed you before, except I'm building the data sets in my head as we work through it. And if I can harness this anxiety, it's a superpower, and I can think about these things long term. And I don't want to get a lot into it because I only have like 15 seconds each slide, I guess. So I wanted to say, learn SQL, and also reach out to me if you want to learn about art. I can't teach art, but if you want to learn about SQL, reach out to me. And I think connecting and growing and harnessing your anxiety superpower is a good thing. Obviously, but I think it's a really great thing. And I think those with anxiety, like myself and whoever else, you can harness that. You can work on it. And not just anything that almost any role could benefit. If you have anxiety, you can work on it. You can harness it for your good. And I'm going to close out here with a couple things. So one of the things is identifying when you're becoming anxious. That's the first thing. Sometimes you don't know what's happening to you, and you don't actually know. And so taking the time to identify when you're anxious and developing tools to cope. And there's two sides of this. One thing is saying things like, what color is that wall, right? That color of that wall is white, right? But at the same time telling your family members to ask you these questions when you're manic or when you're excited or you're over anxious. And finally, and I'm going to read this one straight on because I wrote this specifically, is don't get captured. This is a model of mine. Don't get captured. Don't let anything stand in your way. Don't get captured by the police. Don't get captured by yourself. Don't get captured by Kohl's Cash. I have a whole nother speech about Kohl's Cash that I want to talk about. I'll talk to you guys about it later. Don't get captured by the enemy. Don't get captured by your insecurities or your desire for validation. Don't get captured by your fear. And finally, don't get captured by your anxiety. Take what your ancestors gave you and weaponize it for success. And just to be clear, success looks different to everyone. And it's not always about money, right? Don't get captured. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Matthew. Our Kohl's Cash discussion group will be in the back corner here after, okay? Okay? Truth. I've just had such a pleasure hearing everyone's stories, and we have one more here on deck here. So our final speaker for the evening, we have Carmen Moore. Yay. That's right. That's right. So Carmen is the founder of 1 + 1 = 4 family coaching, focusing on empowering blended families. She is a certified Christian coach and blended family specialist, as well as a conference and workshop facilitator, speaker, and teacher. Carmen is the wife of Philip Moore, founding pastor of Eden Fellowship Ministries. Combined, they have 9 children, 7 grandchildren, with 1 more on the way. What a blessing. That is so exciting. Let's welcome Carmen up to the stage here, everybody.
Okay, is that better? There we go. This is my core. My parents had 4 children together, and this is the beautiful outcome of this union. My husband, mom, 3 of my siblings, aunt, nieces, nephews, and grandchildren. We have dinners, of course, at my house. Everyone just loves to be around me. I always say, if you look up the definition of blended family, you'll see my smiling face. I don't look at blended families the same way many of you do. You might be wondering how my prior picture is a blended family. On August 24th, we became a family of 11, with children ranging from 10 to 23. Some of them living with us, there are others with their parents, and my wonderful husband is out there. Here's the story of a lovely lady who was bringing up 3 children of her own, till the one day when the man stalked this lady who was busy with 6 kids of his own. And he told her she was the one, and that's the way we became the Moore Bunch. This isn't the only reason why my face is the definition of a blended family. My parents got divorced, my dad remarried, his wife had 4 children. Growing up, I knew I had 1 sister, and then when I was 14, I met my other sister. So now I'm navigating how to be who I am between these places. Now we've gone from 4 of us to 6 of us for my dad's children. Me and my 2 older sisters are only 2 years apart. Yes, my dad was a Rolling Stone. My mom loves my sisters, their children, their husbands like her own. That's my family. My older sister has a brother and a sister. They're my brother and sister. Their children are and grandchildren call me Auntie Carmen. Both my sister's moms call me their daughter, and my children call them all Granny. My husband is their son-in-law. All of our children, regardless of how they fit in, are all cousins. Family is blended, melded, and shaken together. That's my family. And my sister Dee has 4 bonus sons of her own, plus her 2. That's my family. This is my paternal grandma, Juanita, and my maternal grandma, Frances, both very strong women. I enjoy spending so much time with them growing up. My grandma, Frances, gave me my first Bible, which I still have today. My grandma, Juanita, cooked, and I loved eating her spaghetti. This is my papa, Albert, and Lonnie. They were business owners all my life. Papa Albert in Houston owned a restaurant called the Back Street and a lounge called the Back Street, and that's where I learned how to shoot pool. Papa Lonnie had a cement contracting business, and you can see him wherever it is throughout Wichita. As an adult, I learned that neither of these men were my biological grandfathers. Now my tree, the foundation I had known all my life, was broken. My dad knew that that wasn't his dad, but my mother didn't find out till she was much older. I wondered, how did my mom feel that she knew that who she thought was her family friend was actually her father? When I look at them together, though, I'm thinking, how could we miss this? I go from 1 uncle on my dad's side to 2 on my mom's side. My dad was unable to give me away, but my Uncle Elliot stepped right in. Overnight, I went from 2 cousins on my mom's side to 9. How do we interact with each other? My Papa Jr. has like 10 brothers and sisters. The first family reunion I attended, they welcomed us with open arms. Now my blended, melded family is even more complex. Do you see how these branches are growing? The reunion with my dad's father didn't go as well. My dad always wanted to meet his father, a recording blues artist. He had me research and find as much information as I could. Ancestry.com became my friend. He always asked, I found this picture, and he always asked me, do you think we look alike? My dad loved to sing and felt that his talent came from his dad. He had so many questions that he never was able to answer. I gave him a DVD with his dad's music and several pictures. When my dad passed away, I'd asked for it back, but his siblings did not agree with that because they felt it was disrespectful to their dad. So that story has ended. I found this picture and thought it represents my family. The roots are twisted, the branches and the limbs are all intertwined. Everything is blended, melded, and shaken together, just like me. This tree is my family tree. The light shining through is God reminding me no matter what, he is there too. This is me, this is my family, this is my identity, blended, melded, shaken, and intertwined together. Thank you.
Thank you to Carmen and sharing the story of your family. Families are never simple, but I think hearing your story, really touching to hear about that. And I'm sure all of us, with all of the speakers this evening, there's probably something that you can identify with, right? Like, I mean, truly, and to hear of what makes that person in the 5 minutes in the slides that we saw, what makes them complete, what they think is a representation of them, that's just a slice of their life. And so I'm hoping if you do get a chance, go speak to them, say hi, tell them if something moved you, let them know, because I think that's just, it feels so good. I mean, I'm a news anchor, and I can tell you, I see the complaint emails, the Facebook messages, but when you get that one that comes in and someone says, you know what, you made my day, nothing's better. So good. Let's say thank you to our speakers tonight. Would you all mind standing? Stand up, please, like stand up, yeah. I'm gonna make you work. I know, they thought they got off easy. They're like, I did my 5 minutes, I'm good. No, come on. We're just so glad. You all did wonderful, truly. I love the difference of the presentations and hearing of everyone. Like, they're just, love it. Come work for the news. All right, well, we want to say thank you also to KMUW and the Wichita Public Library. My goodness, tonight's program was fantastic. Thank you. And of course, the Big Read Planning Committee for putting everything together, and to TempleLive for hosting us this evening. Beautiful venue, beautiful stories, beautiful you. Tonight's talk certainly giving us all a little bit of something to think about, but on this Friday, I just want to say thank you again for letting me be here to be a part of this experience. I'm Annette Lawless. I work for Cake News. I'm more than a news anchor, more than a wife, more than a mom. I'm me, and I'm fabulous, and you guys are too. I just want to say thank you to all and to have a good night. Okay.